What's up, Chris? It's Tuesday.
Tuesday, doing taxes on
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday before the Tuesday deadline
That's
to
right.
get those taxes in.
How exciting that the deadline's in the middle of the week. At least it's not a Friday or a Monday this time, right?
Yeah,
You get the whole one extra Monday to be ready.
that's right.
Um, as we were preparing for this episode, welcome everyone to the Practice Playbook. I'm Chris. He's Jay, like it says down there and over there. Um, and we're here to talk to you about taxes. Jay has spent the better part of the past month working through getting people extended or to the finish line for this upcoming deadline. It's a week from today, and we thought, what more relevant time to talk about how that's going than right now? Because let's face it, if you're not like mostly done, right, like it's not getting done, right? So for
Well, what do
for
you mean by mostly done?
you tell me, Jay. Like if you're waiting on PBCs or anything like that, like that's not
Okay,
happening.
yeah,
But if you're in the review stages,
yeah,
you've gotten the return populated, right, and you're
yeah,
comfortable
yeah,
with the numbers, but you're just like checking in with the client, maybe doing those types of things. Like that one, those ones
yeah.
might get filed, but if you're waiting on a piece of information or anything like that, seems like it's probably extension time.
No, you're
Um,
you're right about that. And we started out our other show on Friday with you get an extension, you get a tariff.
Good tariff.
Yeah, well, yeah. At this point, it's you get that extension, and that's
That's
what
right.
it's all about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my queue, and I'm not sweating it. There
Right.
are some returns that still need to be completed. We have one that's been untouched. It has not been untouched, but uh, so we got to get that done. And I mean, I got about six of them out this morning.
Yeah.
So that's good. They're moving. They're not sitting there stagnant. And
Yeah.
you know, you, you get those extensions done early, so you don't have to worry about them at this time. But
Right.
there are still extensions that need to be done, and at this point, depending on how many you got, you might be pulling some resources just to do the extensions.
Yeah.
And this more than any other season it's been difficult, and I don't know. I mean, I'm more involved this season than I was in the last couple.
Yeah. Sure.
But my last full tax season was the 2020 season in 2021,
Yeah.
and then kind of took a year
That's a
hiatus and jumped back
it's
in.
the COVID one.
But yeah, that was a bad one.
Yeah.
And well, that was a year after
The COVID year.
the
Yeah. The
COVID one.
COVID year.
Yeah, I mean,
So all the
we're still digging out
PPP.
of the COVID year
Right.
because of S elections that never got processed and things like that. With even though
Mm,
returns got accepted as S corps,
fascinating.
but they got
Yeah.
sent to purgatory because they're not showing up anywhere. So
Yeah.
those have been taken care of, and
Yeah.
even going back with a late election, they went back 2 or 3 years, but they didn't go back the entire period. And
Weird.
it is what it is.
Right.
We just do what we got to do with that. So
Yeah.
that the nice thing is, uh, at this point, let's get it done. We got a week left,
That's
but
right.
and you've seen it with me, the ups and the downs and
Right.
the exhaustion, and basically I didn't sleep very well last night, and it was a
Yeah.
running theme when we met as a tax team earlier today. People are like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I'm exhausted, I couldn't sleep, and people are thinking about that deadline and what they got to do. So
Yeah.
that wasn't it for me. I mean, I was full on working on something else, which we'll talk about at the end, and talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that because that goes back to a couple shows ago, but.
Sure.
Uh, you go through these what it's like a roller coaster. Your
Yeah.
brain, you're going, and then something happens, and you have this spikes, and it's like, oh wow, and it's like, yeah, I don't want to do this. Let's do something else. Let's shift. and then you jump
Yeah.
back into it, and it's like you get it done, and it's what it's about. And you know, we did a show last July, talk about
Yeah.
burnout
Oh
and
yeah.
stress and all of that stuff.
I don't think it may have been
And
earlier than that, but yeah.
well, I had gone. We had been on vacation at the same time, and it was after the
Hmm.
vacation, so
Okay. I don't
had to
remember.
be yeah,
I don't remember.
yeah.
Last year we talked about this.
Yeah,
It's a
we
very
did,
real thing, right?
and I could see it not only in myself. I mean, I didn't get burnout this year, but there were highs and lows for sure. But I saw
Yeah.
it in others, and I'm seeing it in others, and you could see just the shifts, the mindset shifts, and the attitude shifts.
Yeah.
And it came up on a call yesterday. It's like I have this bad attitude. Not me. One of the people said I have a bad attitude. I said, well, I mean, look at me. I was born with a bad attitude, and I use that to help me drive to the finish line. So use
Yeah.
that bad attitude to get you to the end, to get you to April 15th, to get
Yeah.
you through to September 15th, and then finally October 15th. And we say want to get to the end. Well, it's only the end of regular season. I mean,
Round
we have the
one.
playoffs.
Where all the good stuff got held for anyway. Like the good returns are all coming later as it is.
Yeah.
All right, so Jay, I have a whole bunch of different questions that I want to
Yeah.
ask you based on
Let's do it.
some of the things that you've said now, some of the things that I've been thinking about, some of the things that I've experienced in my past. So my first question for you, Jay, did you extend your personal returns yet?
My personal returns. No.
Me neither. I need to do them. I'm going to do them this weekend, I think.
My business returns were extended well in advance. I have not done my personals.
Got it.
And
Got it.
it makes sense that I would, because they need to be done.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the businesses to get it done. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the same. So
Yeah, and now you just made me think. Oh, my mother-in-law hasn't asked me yet about hers.
Ooh.
So I'm gonna have to
do the follow up. There you
too.
go.
Yeah.
Glad to have asked that question. Then
Yeah.
you're welcome, Jay.
Yeah.
My second question, and I think that this one's not less personal, more relevant to the show today. You mentioned that you felt more involved this tax season, but at the same time, you're feeling less burned out. So Jay, I mean, what's the secret? What do we do differently here? How are both of those things true at the same time?
Well, to put it bluntly,
Yeah,
we had less tax returns to do.
there you go. I mean,
So,
that's
and
the solution.
I mean, I am more involved. I'm doing more, but we have less returns, and I have other duties. So, I have other things to occupy my time. There are times when you have to dig in, like today, and
Yeah.
spend your entire day doing it. But
Right.
like we talked about in the past, there are certain things I enjoy doing, and if I can get a day of that, it helps get the endorphins moving and get things getting in the right direction. And then it allows me to go into the doldrums when I'm doing some of this stuff. And I'm not doing prep, I'm doing review. I've
Right.
had to do a lot of the admin side for us, and
Sure.
the hard part there is the waiting. It's like, hey, sent you the engagement letter, haven't heard from you. And you send it out, it goes out through email.
Yeah.
All right, well, let it send out the automatic reminder.
Right.
And it's like, okay, let's copy the URL of that proposal, and let's send out a regular
Personalize
email.
it a little more. Yeah.
Let's
Right.
personalize it a little bit.
Right.
And here we were last Thursday, 2 weeks, well, a week and a half. Yeah, a little less than 2 weeks from the deadline. And I still hadn't heard from 2 people on the list. Now, I haven't heard from a few others as well, but I wrote a couple of them off due to other circumstances. But these 2, one, we're doing his business return right now, and he hadn't signed it. And I'm like, dude, we're running out of time to file this extension. We got to get you to sign this. And it's like,
Right.
just all I need you to sign it to say, yeah, I give you permission to do it.
You're
You
right.
know,
Exactly.
because all I want to do is protect you and file that extension.
That's right. Exactly.
You know,
That it is funny how I don't think people think about that they need to do that. Right. Clients aren't always really thoughtful of. Oh, I need to. It is important for me to
yeah,
actually like give the thumbs up. I know we've been doing this for a while, but like that is it's an interesting thing. I think you touched on a couple things that are really important to highlight, Jay. The first one is one that we've talked about several times here, right? Um, you mentioned that you got to do something that you enjoyed, something that inspired you, and I
yeah,
think that that's a really good reminder that especially during this time of year when you're busy, be it reviewing or preparing returns, like sometimes you just need to do something for yourself, and that can mean for Jay, I'm sure that means like digging into technology, building out some type of automation work that may come up again later in our show today. Or for me, it could be like taking a walk. Right? I just love to get outside and to be able to while we have like relatively nice weather here in Texas, like go enjoy it while I can. And it could be different for anybody, right? Maybe it's just read a chapter in a book, right? Sit on the couch for a minute and watch a show. For I don't know, my wife loves watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine right now. We're doing a rewatch, right? Those episodes pretty short, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that, right? You can get in, get out, and then get back to work, right? But it's something that gives you this opportunity to take a break and take a breather, and use it to recharge yourself.
it resets you. I mean,
Right.
let's say you put in 5 hours and you want to take your lunch break, and
Yeah.
instead of just sitting at your desk and eating, just do what you said. Go take in a 25-minute show and just recharge and reset. And it actually does a great job for that. And
Yeah.
this year for us here in Florida, it was a little warmer than it has been
Yeah.
usual tax seasons. And
Yeah.
I would love to be able to wheel my desk out into my backyard. And, 'cause, I mean, you're not doing a tax return on your 13-inch screen over here. You got
Yeah.
to have your. Well, I've been doing it back there, but
Yeah.
but where I was going with that was, I mean, getting outside, getting fresh air. Like today, we are on the backside of this front that blew through here, and like you were having freeze warnings. Well, we're in the lower 70s, so the
Yeah.
windows are open. So we're getting air blowing through, and it's just great. And
Right.
that's energizing in itself. But
Right.
the
And
other
imagine getting
thing,
out and taking a 10-minute walk, that kind of thing would just
right?
go a long way. The
Yeah,
other thing,
and
Jay?
the other thing is, you go out and take that walk and take the puppy
Yeah.
out and get her out there and
Right.
greeting other people, and it's a great feeling to do that.
Right.
It takes you out of that grumpy mood.
Right. Yeah, especially in those sunny areas. If you're somewhere that's a little bit more dreary, well, I'm sorry. There are other options and other things that can make you happy. I do think exercise is often a good one, right? Because it literally pumps your blood and allows for that circulation to help improve with mood. That's some scientific stuff right there.
Yeah.
Um, about how valuable it can be. So definitely, like this is an obvious and clear reminder of how valuable that can be. Um, yeah, and so I think that's like that is really a really important message. Um, Jay, I know like we talk a couple times a week on these different shows, right? And it feels like we were only like just yesterday like talking about all right, what's going to happen from tax policy perspective, like what's the new Congress going to do? And now it's already like tax deadline, and I'm like, wait, what
Yeah.
happened? Wait, how did we get here? I feel that way, and I'm not touching anybody's taxes, right? Not even my own yet. Is this like is that the way that tax preparers feel or tax reviewers feel right now too? Has this just gone by like so fast?
Going
How's,
going into it, it takes forever to get to the 15th. But when you look
yeah.
back at it, you realize how quickly it went by. You
Yeah.
know, I, filing season opens late January. I say, fi- filing season starts February 1st. That's when things are rolling in. You're getting things moving.
Yeah.
So February 1st through March 15th. So you have a month and a half to get all the pass-throughs set up and processed, get all of those
Yeah.
extensions, and get those
Right.
K1s out for those returns you've done. And then you have another month to do the 1040s and the C corps. So
Right.
it goes by so quick. I mean, and the other thing we talked about getting out. So on March 17th, I believe, was the deadline this year.
Sure.
I think it
Seems
was.
reasonable.
Whatever it was on a Monday. I was on the golf course.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 17th. Yeah, on the golf course. I mean, I think
So
that's a really valuable thing to do, right?
yeah,
As like I mentioned, kind of as I was making a joke that we're a week away, right? Like truly on the 15th, like there's not that much you can do.
well,
um,
I will say I was on my phone and emailing and talking to people and emailing like constantly between holes. Luckily,
yeah,
I
sure.
wasn't driving the cart because it's like trying to coordinate people, getting things
uh,
signed and
right,
answering questions. So you do have to battle that. But,
right.
that had always been spring break, when my daughter was in school.
Oh
So
yeah, okay.
her spring break was actually, it was that week. It started on the 17th.
Yeah.
But, years past, we were always, the last 3 4 years, we were doing something. I was always out of town during that period, but
Oh
I,
yeah,
I
sure.
wasn't as active in it. So this year was a little different. Planned for it, and those that didn't quite uh, align with my planning, yeah, those were what I was dealing with on that day. So
Yeah,
if
right.
you plan it and make sure you set it up for success, you can do that.
Yeah, and I think like that's probably really good advice for right now, right? It's April 8th. April 15th is next week. It's on a Tuesday. But you want to get to Bermuda as quick as you can or whatever, right, Jay? So why not go on Monday?
Right? Yeah.
And just be really well planned, right? So that there are those things that you do need to resolve, you can have in place and have ready to go. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, that's maybe a little bit aggressive, but planning those things and getting ready for them, that's definitely a thing that you
Yeah.
should be doing. Jay, if you're talking to a tax preparer today, right? Talk a tax reviewer, right? One of your peers. What are you telling them that they need to be doing right now?
Getting some sleep.
Right?
Let their brain relax at night.
Yeah.
And you know, I say that, but a lot
Right.
are putting in 18-hour days right now,
Yeah.
and they don't have the time for that. So it's like this last stretch. Make sure you take care of yourself, get some sleep, drink your water, get your liquids in, drink your coffee in the morning. You got to have your coffee,
Yeah.
but get some good food and enjoy it, and slow down a
Yeah.
little bit. And be with the ones that you love and do the things that you love doing, and that will help you get through these last 5 work days.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's some more messages in there that we can talk through a little bit more, right? We talked about exercise and that in sunshine and how valuable they are.
Yeah.
But it is surprising how powerful just drinking water can be, and staying hydrated. And it's really easy, especially if you're in a situation where you feel like you need to work those 18-hour days. Like it's really easy to get distracted or to like get zoned in and focused in and forget to do those things. Like I completely
Yeah.
understand how that can happen.
But by doing it, you're getting up to refill your cup,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're getting up for bio breaks. So you're having to get up. So it's getting the blood moving, getting things
Right.
in order, and it also gives you a little break. So
Yeah,
drink up.
definitely an important thing. And then Jay, I have a question for you, right? These folks that
Sure.
are doing 18-hour days, Right. Some of those folks are going to have been doing them for the past 20 years, right?
Yeah.
That's just what they're accustomed to and what they're used to. Some of them are going to be like maybe kids that are just getting into the accounting space and don't know any better, right? Like, hey, the 18-hour day of public accounting, that's what you do, right? Um, what kind of advice do you have for folks that find themselves in that position right now? Because Jay, um, I don't mean this to be sound the way that it might end up sounding, but you're not working 18-hour days, are you? Right. And so, uh,
10, but not
10, I
18.
mean,
There's a big
yeah,
difference. Big difference there.
there's a
Yes.
substantial difference, right?
Yes.
And and
But I know that my brother's firm, they are probably doing that, and
right.
you know,
And so
and
that's a good example. Like, what do you tell your brother when April 16th, you're or whatever next weekend you're going
yeah,
to golf, right? And you're catching up on the golf course with your brother because he's now got some time, and he's like, "Whew, man, I slept the past 3 days because I was working so much." What advice do you give him, or what? I mean, not that stubborn old brothers of yours are gonna like make big changes, right? But
yeah.
what kinds of things would you say to someone who is at least he's is maybe complaining about it, right? Of like, oh man, it was so much. Like
Yeah.
what? And maybe even came to you for advice, Jay. Of like, I see that you're doing this. I see you're doing 10-hour days and still putting out 2 podcasts and building out these automations behind the scenes. Like, I want that for me. What advice would you give them to help to change the narrative around those days, those
Well,
longer working periods?
first thing is find some tools that will help you do it
Mm,
faster and quicker and easier.
yeah.
And I know they have. I think we talked about them when Taxstone had their little data snafu. Yeah, they
Yeah.
went on Taxstone this year,
Mm.
and they had a little snafu because every client clicked the "I'm done" button first. So they got notified by every client that they were done uploading information when they just accepted their organizers.
Oh
So they had
no.
to do some resetting there and figure that out. But and you expect that when you're launching new
Yeah, sure.
technology, and
Yep.
a lot of it depends on your clientele. Are
Right.
they
Sure.
that technologically savvy? Is your team technologically savvy to do that? So there's a
Important.
lot to it, and
Right.
in the years that I've been advising other firms, there's very different tax businesses. You
Yeah.
have tax shops that they are mills, and all they do are thousands of 1040s,
Yeah.
and this is it for them. They open in January, they shut down April 15th, and they're open through extension season. But that's it. They're making their money now,
Yeah.
and it's very different than what we are doing,
Yeah.
where we are doing tax prep, but we're also doing tax planning and advisory, and it's very, very different. So those
Yeah.
tax firms that are doing thousands of 1040s, they are working 18-hour days. They're working 7 days a week, and
Yeah.
some are making less than $500 a return. And
I
I
can't
don't
even
want to
imagine
talk pricing, but
it.
if you were to double your pricing, you could do twice, well, half as many returns. I was going to say twice as few, but you can do half as many. And by doing that, you relieve some of that pressure. And you know,
Right.
I I learned a long, long time ago, and so my my tax history started back early 2000s. I was
Mine too.
I
That's when I started doing my own taxes.
I I started by, well, actually, that's when I started my nutraceutical business, and it was
Mm.
very slow, and I was actually uh, bootstrapping it,
Yeah.
because I was working as a CFO at a pharmaceutical company, and I still had my weekends and stuff. And guy working for me is like, "Hey, let's do taxes." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do taxes." And we did. We did it in
Right.
our little office warehouse, where we had the nutraceutical business. So we booked
Yeah.
appointments, and people came in and did them. And I didn't know any better then. It was $250, and
Mm.
and people would come in, and we'd sit there and we'd do the tax returns, and it's like an hour that I could never get back in my life ever again.
But
And
you exchanged it for a price.
I exchanged it for a price, and that changed. That was 2003, 2004,
Yeah.
and I did a small amount of taxes, but from that time till I started the digital CPA in 2011,
Yeah.
and that is when it grew, and I was doing them. I wouldn't say much more than the 250 I was doing, but I was making enough. And
Yeah.
then it hit me. It's like that. It's just too much, too little.
Right.
You're doing this service, and you know, you are at people's whims. Whether they show up or not, or if they're going to sign the documents. And by 2012, when I was fully in the Zero ecosystem and in the cloud, I still had the software on the computer, but I started shifting tools at that point, and I went to a remote model, and it was a little bit different. So much less cost, but still started charging more for the returns, and realizing it's like you don't need to do as many, and
Yeah.
that is the key. There are enough preparers out there that can pick up the slack. If you're doing 15,000 returns, you double your price, and you're only doing 7,500 now. There's plenty of people that can pick them up, but you're at that point where you're getting paid, and you're actually being able to take care of yourself a little bit better. And I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way when you're doing tax, is charge the right price. And on the other side of that, not just do the compliance, what I was talking about earlier. We do planning and advisory, and that helps bring that revenue in year round.
Yeah.
So,
Which is a super important thing, right? Because like you're saying, if you're stacking all of your revenue generating items all at the same 2.5 month period, and and then you're generating no revenue for a significant portion of the rest of the year, like then you have to make that work, right? And that becomes a more challenging model, right? It becomes more of a side hustle than like a career, um, and so it becomes that much more important and that much more valuable. And Jay, I think you'd agree. Like typically speaking, like it's that much more fun to provide actual advice,
yeah,
to do the planning work that you're talking about, to do that advice, to be able to be the person who's thinking through like unusual strategies or interesting strategies or every one of your client situations so that you can give them the best advice to make the best decisions, right?
for sure.
That's that becomes so much more powerful,
Yeah,
and rewarding,
yeah.
um,
Now,
on its own.
yeah, and that is rewarding. And going back to what we're talking about, lessons learned. So,
Yeah.
uh, way back when, working with a client, and not only was I doing their accounting, I was doing their IT support. I was doing a lot with them, and it was like 2011, 2012,
Yeah.
and I said, I had just started using Zero. I said, let's get you on Zero. And no, I don't trust the cloud. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't trust the cloud? She's like, it's not secure. And she's logging into her bank account, and her password is right at the top there. And I'm like, come on, let's do it. It would make things so much easier, because I was having to remote desktop into their QuickBooks. and doing it when they're not
Oh
there.
boy.
So
Yeesh.
yeah, so it's the things that you do. And then the same conversation, she's like, I need to put money in retirement. What do you suggest I do? And first question was, are you looking to save on taxes by doing that? And she says, of course. And she says, my advisor pitched me a Roth. And I'm like, well, if you want to save money on your taxes, a Roth is not going to do that. It's going to grow tax free, but it will
Not your current ones.
not help you currently.
Not right now.
So had the conversation, followed up with an email, and basically got to tax prep time, and yeah, they did Roth. And then and for 3 years, and this was during the Affordable Care Act time. For 3 years, they made too much money, and they got spanked on having to pay back the stipends. And I'm like, you've got to tell your insurance agent your income. And like, nah, wait, it's okay. And then they have to pay it. And then I'm sitting there having to break it to them, and then they're crying. It's like, come on, you're killing me here. So finally, I don't know what happened there. I think this was one of those clients I pruned off at some point.
Yeah.
It had to have been because I stopped doing anything in QuickBooks, and ended up I actually converted him to Zero, put it on there, showed it to him, even recreated their chart of accounts, which was really bad, and rebuilt it and made it really pretty. And they're like, no, we can't do that. And basically, she hired an office manager that didn't want to touch it either, and she ended up passing about a year later.
Oh no!
And they're like, we need you to be our bookkeeper. We need you to do. I can't do QuickBooks. I'm sorry. Still would not make the change. And it's like, that's when you realize it's like you got to know when is when, and when to walk away from certain situations, and when to go all in certain situations.
Yep.
And those were lessons learned to me way back when. And by not doing the QuickBooks and having to remote desktop in on a Saturday morning every week to do my work, it's like, no, it's not the way. It's not how I want to work. If I like what I want to do on a Saturday morning is pop up in here, grab my coffee, open up make.com or N8N and automate something. I don't want to be jumping into QuickBooks or whatever and doing that stuff, especially remote desktop when it slow and all that other jazz. But those are the things that stick out in your mind. It's like, I advise you to do this, and you did the opposite.
Yeah.
So and I learned early on, you have to, if you're not pruning clients every year, you can't grow, because you're going to look at your clients and rate them. And when you rate them, you're not rating them based on likability, although it probably does have an impact. But it's like the work that you have to do, the value that you're getting for it, the value they're getting for it. And at some point, you have to let some of them go because it's holding you back. They're keeping you from getting that next client that's coming in at twice the revenue.
Right.
So
and I think, I know it's sometimes a challenge, but it becomes a really, really important thing to do. And so, Jay, I think obviously a lot of tax pros are probably planning their vacation for next week. Maybe already just daydreaming about June or something, like just getting ready for the future already. But that once you're back from vacation, once you've got your rest, right, in another couple weeks' time, it becomes a really good time to reflect on exactly those things, right? To take that post-mortem of what was it that went well, what was it that went poorly, and what are the things, what are the clients, what are the coworkers that I need to revisit, right? Even what are the processes, right? You want to
Yeah.
take stock of where you were and what went good and what went poorly, so that you have the opportunity. Basically, the same thing that you tell your clients, right? If you're thinking about planning for next year, you can't do it all in December, right? You can't make decisions that matter just at the end of the year. You need to do planning. You need
Exactly.
to be thoughtful about it. You need to take the time and effort to do it now. Jay, I know you told a story from not recently around around cloud-based tools and how they could potentially be really helpful. Um, I know we transition from some technologies to different technologies, and I know that you also mentioned, right, you had more time, but you were more involved, right? Were there some tools that you used this year that helped you to have this some of this success, or did it supplement you in the right way, or um,
Yeah. Uh, so it's kind of like a full circle moment. So our tax department at High Rock merged with another company, Sherwood Tax,
yeah,
and they were using G Suite and Carbon. And that was
mm,
a set I used probably back in 2013, 2014. Uh, and Carbon has come so far. And, everything that we were doing in Google Sheets and Excel, which I'm still maintaining so that our team can have access to it, you know, we're doing in Carbon, and it's super slick. I mean, you just go in there and look at your work and set up some filters, and you could see how many returns you have to do, how many are finished, how many are extended, how many to be extended, how many to be reviewed, how many you're waiting for signature. I mean, it's all out there and really easy, and all the
yeah,
communication is in there and tracked by the jobs and the work, and it makes it really really nice. You know, uh, I haven't used Tally for this year to prep returns, but I did use it to review the returns
oh
based
yeah,
on the data that the prep team was doing. And I've been using Tally for, actually. I was there before it was born, talking to my buddy Peter in 2015 about this dream he had. And next thing you know, here it is in reality. And I'm sitting there using it. It's like, wow, I remember that conversation. It's like really cool. And looking at it this year, I mean, after not really being in the game the last 2 years, it
yeah,
has come so far. And you connect it up to your GL, you suck the data into it, and they have a kickstart to it now, so it can actually use AI, know what the chart of accounts should be mapped to on the tax return, and then you're just left to do the outliers and you map them. And by doing so,
wow, yeah,
now with the click of a button, you're sending that data into your tax software. So you're saving the time it takes to do the data entry. So you can spend more time. And what I always said was spend more time on the delivery and the review of the return, because that's where you can have upsells and other opportunities to make more revenue. And
yeah,
depending on the type of client, that's very important to do so. Uh, but you know, for me right now, using it, it's like, oh, it makes it so much easier. I can go to Tally 4. It's got all the financial statements, all the information. It's got all the adjustments, and everything to tie out that business return is in there. And then you review your assets and things like that, and make sure it looks right. And what I've tried to do over the last couple of years is get the accounting teams to review all of that before we even get to the taxes. Looking at owner's equity, distributions, making sure owners aren't dipping below basis. And
hmm,
for the most part, you and the production team don't know what basis is. I'm not
sure,
saying you don't know what basis is. You don't know what their basis is.
oh
But if
yeah,
you look
right,
at the capital
definitely not,
accounts, you have an idea. You just want to
right,
make sure that that capital stays positive. And if they're pulling money out, you're either warning the client, "Hey, you're coming into capital gains time here," or let's slow it down. So
yeah,
being aware of that and being able to make sure that that's passing, making sure that retained earnings is rolling over properly. It wasn't adjusted after the tax return was done. That the
Yeah.
prior year's been locked and there's been no changes. Looking at your fixed assets, making sure it complies with the capitalization policy, looking at repairs, maintenance, other things like that to make sure that they might need to be capitalized. So by doing
Yeah.
that upfront, it saves us time doing the return. I mean, we're still going to look at some of that stuff, but by having some of these automations, it gets us to the delivery faster. And I think that ultimately is the best thing. And it's putting, I know in our case, I am the last set of eyes on it, but there are two other sets on it as well because people are looking at it and making sure that it's correct. So
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part is putting out good work, and I'm proud of the prep team that we have and being associated with these ladies. And
Awesome.
yeah, it's been a good season so far.
So far, halfway through, right? This is really halftime, not even the playoffs. It's like the All-Star break or whatever. That's funny.
Good way to put it. Yeah.
If you reflect back on where we are right now, Jay, if you were to make one change in a process, like what's really stood out to you as something that you want to make better next year?
I still want to make communication better.
Sure.
The tools that we have don't allow us to give clients a better status right now. I want somebody to not have to email me, but go into a portal and see, okay, have the little pizza tracker in there.
Yeah, sure.
Your return is waiting on your information. It's in prep. It's in review. It's being sent to you. It's in the oven. Things like that. And I was thinking about that walking the dog today. It's like, what could I do based on the statuses? Send out a weekly email based on the status, and if we're waiting on information, prompt them to get us what we need, and
right.
because a lot of that is manual based on that, but looking at more and more of the AI agents, it's going to be a lot easier to prompt doing some of that.
Yeah, you can get them to make the pizza tracker for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Use the statuses in the tool.
Yeah.
Fun. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's any question that when you're an advisor and a service provider, communication is critical.
For sure.
Like it is the most important part of the process, right? And a lot of that administrative time that you can use, like that you end up using, is responding to the email, right? Of what's my status, even if the answer is, I can't tell you anything more than what I saw. I saw someone tweeting about this earlier today, right? As somebody asked, like, what's the status of my refund? And you still have to respond to that email to say, like, here's the IRS refund site. This is where I would get the information anyway, right? Like, I don't know anything more about this than you, but that's effort that you're going through. And if you have the ability to kind of circumvent that process, right, by just saying at the beginning of the process, if you come here, you'll be able to see his status all the way through, right? That can be that can be a game changer, Jay. I think you're spot on there.
Yeah. Now, one thing about Carbon, there are automations in there that will, if you click off jobs or tasks in this section, it'll change your status and things like that. But there's also client tasks or messages that you could trigger to send to clients based on, hey, we just filed an extension and things like that. And there's one where you send a checklist for them. When you send them their return to review, it's like, hey, click this and let us know when you're done. So basically, you really don't need it because they're signing it. We get notified from that. But it's still there, and there are ways to automate a lot of that communication. But I still think that more is better. And
Right.
At some point, we're going to get to that point, that place, and some of it is its statuses in carbon, and how can I am. I was going to say I am sure I could do this, but um, I was going to say I'm sure it's easy to do, but I don't know what Carbon's API looks like. I don't know if it's an open API, but with what I've done in the last 3 days, I think I can do it. So it's not going to be something I'm going to be pushing right away, but I think that
it's a June project, or
yeah,
it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting, and so I think that ends up being a great transition, Jay. Unless you have some other final thoughts around.
I do have one other thing, two other things actually. So you had mentioned how for us, we don't want to wait to December to make these changes.
That's right.
I say June, July, August is change season, because we've gone through it between February and June, February and April, and we've seen what works, what doesn't work. And if we're going to change something, that 2-month period in the summer is a great time to get it done and test it to see how it impacts the business and your capacity and your productivity. And that way you still have time to make additional tweaks going into the next season. And I think it's really important.
That is great. Yeah, that's great advice.
And last night, before I jumped into working on my project, I was scrolling TikTok, and one of the creators I was watching was like, "Man, it's April 7th. If you haven't talked to your accountant, you need to." And I jumped in there and made a comment. Dude,
that's good advice.
You're about 6 months too late. I mean, it's great to do that now, but there is nothing we can do to help you save on your taxes. And I'm reading, well, I'm not reading, but I'm listening to all of these creators. Yeah, I went to my tax professional. They saved me $30,000. Well, I'm really curious how they're saving $30,000 and what they're doing, because at this point in the game, it's too late to save that kind of money. You have to start planning
now for next year.
Right.
Yeah.
April to June, July is when you've got to start. The last opportunity to start is really like after
July.
July is about it, because you have to have time to put those plans in action.
That's right. Yep.
That is the key to it. And so that's it, But I love watching these creators talk about it, and it's not as bad as it was last year.
That's good.
The tax firms were driving me nuts, and we've had some of those discussions. But last year there was a guy I was following. He was like one of the first people that bought one of the Jeep 4xUs, which I had, and he became TikTok famous, and he built an app to help him track his expenses. And he was talking about giving money to other creators, and no, that is not gifts. That's advertising. You're paying them for advertising. I'm like, no, that's gifts. That's not a business expense for you. Sorry, dude. So be careful with that. I'm talking to tax professionals and accounting professionals. You all know what's going on, but the creators, they will bite. So, let's try to give them the best information we can.
Yeah, right. Well, wonderful, Jay. I think that's a good conversation around tax time.
You're skeptical.
It's just always wild how a topic that comes together as it's tax season can result in a really easy and comfortable 50-minute conversation.
Yeah.
But I think there's lots of good advice, right? The key takeaways that I had, right, Jay, are if you're not already, make sure you're taking time for yourself, like that. That's really important, and Jay is a very clear example of how valuable that can be, right? From the overwhelm from last year to the much higher spirits of this year, like that's because he's taking time for himself, right? That is the reason why. They use that period from from June through August as your change season. I think that's excellent advice as well, because this is the time that you can troubleshoot, you can make those mistakes in that we talked about on the last show, around jumping in and attempting new things, right? And so this is going to be a time where it becomes relevant, because you're going to be able to implement it for your extended deadlines, and be able to see the value of those changes now, before you get to the end of the year and before you get to next year as well. Um, and then finally, right? It's a lot of effort. So like, give yourself a round of applause, right? Be grateful and be thankful. You did a lot of work, and it was really, really, it made a lot of differences. I think people often lose sight of that, that have how much people dread doing their taxes. And so if you think about it from that perspective, right, is that you're providing a service that somebody wants, and you're relieving them of a burden that would have probably have been easily overwhelming for them, just for themselves. You're truly making a difference to those people's their lives and their businesses, and I think that's always the thing that's really important to reflect on. So be
For sure.
thankful for that you've been able to succeed as far as you've gotten. So, Jay, any key takeaways or final thoughts that I didn't touch on?
No, I think you did a good job there. For me, it's all about finding the efficiencies and
Yeah.
being more productive, using technology to its fullest, and finding that new technology. Now, going into this tax season, there were a bunch of different platforms that were purchased by CCH and by Thompson's, and so it's going to be interesting to watch how that morphs. And
Hmm.
we're using some of those platforms now, but we'll see what happens. It's
Right.
interesting landscape.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, Jay, do you want to talk about your automation now? Or you want to just save it to next week?
No, let's talk a little bit. It's not really talking about the automation. Let's talk about a little bit about good advice. And a couple weeks
Ah.
ago we talked about getting those AI skills and how to use it. And one of the things I said was that you want to jump in, test it, use it, and put in a prompt, get a response, make it better, go back and forth, get your results. And you know, one thing I said I was going to do was use it to help deploy some software. And I I tried doing it on my own, and it's like, yeah, let's just go through this process. And I was using ChatGPT only, and I deployed. Well, I started to try to deploy something. I wasn't successful, and I wasn't in the right frame of mind. We then had that conversation, and I came back to it. And this weekend, I actually deployed 3 apps, and
Let's go.
basically used ChatGPT and Claude. And yeah, they both hallucinated a little bit. Yeah, I had some errors, and you basically copy and paste the error, put it in there. Oh, I see what we did wrong. We used an old code there, or something like that. And so it spit it out, and it was went really well. And so basically, I wanted to launch N8N on Azure in a self-hosted environment, and by doing so, I could also connect it to the Zero MCP server, which is the model concept model content protocol server.
Yeah.
And basically, it's middleware between you and the APIs. And I connected it to Cloud Desktop, and it was working, but I still can't get it to work with N8N. And I probably spent 5 hours on it last night, coding back and
Oh
forth.
boy.
Yeah, I mean, I went all in. By that time, I was so wired. I was wide awake, and it was. That's why I didn't sleep last night. So,
Oh yeah. Okay.
so got through that, and so I'm communicating with it, and it's working, but I don't have the right connection yet. So
Ah,
I'm gonna
okay.
give it a little time, so I'm gonna stay away from it for a couple days.
There you go.
And the other thing that I launched is an API toolkit, which has a bunch of functions in it that will help with some of the content that Chris and I are doing here. And hopefully you'll see some of that soon. So
there we go. Love it.
We'd love to talk about that. But using it and learning and absorbing from some of that learning, it's like going through that process. It's like, oh, I don't need to type that in. Let's just do that, and I did, and it helped. And by the time I was done, I was understanding it a whole lot better, and I wasn't needing as much help. I mean, learning how to use command line interface and using Docker and all these other things, all foreign to me, but I'm learning it. So, and it's fun. My wife's like, "What are you doing? You're so busy." I'm like, "You'll find out in about 12 months." Because ultimately, I'm helping her build something for her business.
Right. Yeah, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, I enjoy hearing the continued progress there, and it stands as a reminder that as you're working through those things, sometimes they take a little bit of time, but when you fell through them, it does give you this ability and opportunity to learn and improve, which is what we're all about, right? That's the main goal here of our show. To me, that's one of the main goals of life. Is just get constant improvement, right? Always better today than I was yesterday.
For sure.
Wonderful. Well, Jay, thank you for sharing, and I look forward to seeing what's happening next there, and then look forward to celebrating the 15th with you next week, Jay.
Oh yeah, we'll break out some bourbon next Tuesday.
I don't know if it'll be tariffs, if it'll be income taxes, or if it'll be some automation that's come through the pipeline here, but we'll be right back here at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern next week on Tuesday, April 15th, a tax day show. So I hope that you'll join us, and we appreciate you coming through and sitting with us today. If you've had your own tax season experience, hit us up in the comments. Let us see what's going on for you. Let us hear all about it. Let us hear your success stories or your failures. Both of those things can you can inspire someone with your success story, but you can inspire them just as much with your failure. So share them all.
For sure.
Love to see them. Otherwise, have a great week. Get out there. Good luck this week. May all your extensions be accepted, and all your clients.
True. That's been an issue.
Fill out and all your clients fill out the whatever form it is, whatever the one that they have to sign for you to e-file on their behalf.
8879.
There you go. May all your 8879s be signed timely.
There you go. Well, have a great week, everybody. 7 days
everyone.
to go.
Woo! Bye, everyone.